Welcome back. Today we're looking at some of the craziest gambling stories ever. From billionaires losing fortunes to everyday people risking everything, let's see just how expensive one trip to the casino can become. First up, imagine wagering over $1 billion during one Vegas trip. This is the incredible story of one of the biggest gamblers ever. Let me tell you about a woman who had it all. Mayor of a beautiful city, married to a millionaire, respected by everyone who knew her name. Now picture that same woman, years later, hunched over a video poker machine at 3 a.m., her fingers mechanically pressing buttons, her once sharp eyes dulled by exhaustion and alcohol.
Maureen O'Connor was a beloved former mayor of San Diego, but O'Connor's life took a stunning turn after it was revealed that she gambled away a fortune.
Prosecutors believe she won and lost more than $1 billion playing video poker. O'Connor said,
"This isn't just another sad story about someone who gambled away their fortune. This is about Maureen O'Connor, San Diego's first female mayor, political powerhouse, philanthropist, and how the casino saw her coming from a mile away. And if it could happen to her, Wayne Srikes, one of the smartest, most disciplined people to ever run a major American city, then honey, it could happen to anyone." So who was Maureen O'Connor before she became a cautionary tale? For starters, she wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth, more like a plastic fork from a fast food joint, one of 13 kids raised by a part-time bookie father. Yeah, irony can be pretty cruel sometimes. Her family was so broke that one Thanksgiving, they molded hamburger meat into the shape of a bird because they couldn't afford the real thing. I'm not even kidding. After college, she became a gym teacher at a Catholic school. Just another 20-something trying to figure out life. Then came the day that changed everything. She brought her students to a city council meeting, watching as fat politicians dismissed these kids like they were nothing. Something snapped in Maureen that day, so what did she do? She ran for city council herself. In 1971, at just 25 years old, when most of us are still figuring out how to do laundry properly, she won. Became one of the youngest council members in San Diego history. During her campaign, she caught the eye of Robert Peterson, the founder of Jack in the Box. You know, the fast food chain with the creepy clown? Yeah, that one. He was a Republican millionaire, 30 years older than her, with a soft spot for liberal causes and, apparently, fiery young politicians. They got married in 1977, the gym teacher and the Burger King. It was like a fairy tale, the kind where the princess doesn't wait around to be rescued but goes out and builds her own damn kingdom. By 1986, that kingdom had expanded. O'Connor crushed the competition to become San Diego's first female mayor. And she wasn't some figurehead either. This woman got things done. She disguised herself as a homeless person, slept on the streets, ate at shelters just to understand what it was really like. She worked on a garbage truck for a day, even went undercover with the police chief interviewing prostitutes to solve a string of murders. For the folks south of Interstate 8, that invisible line dividing rich San Diego from working class San Diego, she wasn't Mayor O'Connor, she was just Maureen. Their Maureen. Then, in 1994, Robert Peterson died after a long battle with leukemia. They had no children, just each other. O'Connor's millionaire husband left her with an estimated fortune of $40 to $50 million. And now, just her, alone in that big La Jolla house with about $50 million and a heart that felt emptier than her bank account was full. Grief does funny things to people. Some throw themselves into work, some into the bottle. Maureen, she found the flashing lights and constant stimulation of video poker machines, the perfect place to not think about the person who wasn't sitting next to her anymore. It started innocently enough around the year 2000, just a distraction, a night out. But here's what most people don't understand about modern casinos. They're not gambling halls, they're laboratories. Psychology experiments running 24/7, designed with a single purpose to separate you from your money in the most efficient way possible. And those video poker machines, they're the creme de la creme of addiction engineering. Every almost one moment, every near miss, every little win that keeps you playing through the big losses, that's not accidental. That's by design. What started as occasional visits soon became daily marathons. Casino staff allegedly kept her comfortable, bringing drinks, meals, anything to keep her at the machine. Records would later show that O'Connor would need to bet an average of $300,000 every day to reach the billion-dollar wagering total she accumulated over 9 years. To put that into context, that's like buying a brand new, fully spec'd Ferrari every single day. In order to keep up, she first started selling her liquid assets. Then her jewelry and personal effects were auctioned, properties sold, second and third mortgages were taken on her La Jolla home. She approached friends for loans. The fortune that Robert Peterson had spent a lifetime building vanished in less than a decade. In 2005, she sold her stunning Heritage House Resort in Mendocino County for $19.5 million. That kind of cash could set most people up for several lifetimes of comfort. For Maureen, it bought her about 4 more years at the tables. By this point, Las Vegas casinos were sending private jets to bring her from San Diego. Think about that for a second. When a business is willing to send a private jet for you, it's not because they like your personality, it's because they're confident they'll make back that jet fuel money, and then some more. By 2008, the situation had gone from bad to desperate. The personal fortune was nearly gone. She had contacted most of her friends for loans. With nowhere else to turn, O'Connor made a fateful decision, a decision that would eventually land her in federal court. As trustee of her late husband's RP Foundation, she had access to the charity's funds, money meant for organizations like the Alzheimer's Association and San Diego Hospice.
I used some of that fortune to help people, and then some of that fortune, when I started to become Maureen too, went into an addiction of gambling.
You lost it.
Yes, I lost a fortune, and for that I'm sorry.
Her game of choice?
Between 2008 and 2009, she transferred $2,088,000 from the foundation to her personal accounts, listing them as loans she intended to repay. This desperate act emptied the foundation completely, leaving it bankrupt. The problem? That's not how charitable foundations work, and it's definitely not how the IRS sees things.
I did borrow the money from my husband's foundation.
That's why she landed in court. Over $2 million taken from a charity set up by her late husband. She'd already remortgaged her home, sold a hotel, auctioned her possessions, apparently spent her last dime. Peterson died in '94.
Industry insiders allege that casinos specifically design experiences for whales, high-rolling gamblers like O'Connor, to keep them playing despite mounting losses. Free accommodations, food, alcohol, and constant affirmation create a cocoon that disconnects players from financial reality. Records would later show a win of $100,000 at Barona Casino in San Diego County, a drop in the bucket compared to her losses, and that's the cruel math of gambling addiction. You remember every win in Technicolor detail. The losses, they blur together like a bad dream you can't quite recall. In 2011, O'Connor's physical health collapsed. Doctors discovered a brain tumor requiring immediate surgery.
I didn't know I had the silent grenade in my head that could go off at any time.
The silent grenade was a golf ball-sized tumor doctors removed from her brain. They discovered it 2 years ago when she started hallucinating. She says she believes the slow-growing tumor contributed to her gambling addiction.
It's not.
The operation left her with physical impairments and memory issues. Her attorneys would later argue that this tumor may have contributed to her impaired decision-making in the preceding years. The operation saved her life, but left her with physical impairments, memory issues, and cognitive struggles. Her attorneys would later argue that this tumor may have affected her decision-making for years before its discovery. Maybe the gambling wasn't just addiction, maybe it was a symptom of something physically wrong in her brain. She moved in with her twin sister, Mavourneen, withdrawing from public life almost completely. Some former friends, people who had known her for decades, couldn't reach her. The woman who once walked through San Diego neighborhoods greeting people by name now couldn't even return a phone call. The mighty had fallen, and they'd fallen hard. The end came when the Internal Revenue Service flagged suspicious transfers, $100,000 checks written to casinos. An investigation revealed the foundation's emptied accounts and the trail of misappropriated funds. On February 14, 2013, Maureen O'Connor entered federal court leaning on a cane, visibly distraught. Prosecutors charged her with money laundering, which could have resulted in a 10-year prison sentence and $250,000 fine. In a deal with prosecutors, O'Connor pleaded not guilty but acknowledged her guilt. The agreement deferred prosecution for 2 years, requiring her to repay the $2,088,000 to the foundation, seek treatment for gambling addiction, and pay back taxes. If she fulfilled these obligations, charges would be dismissed.
And only after all that was done did she then go and raid a private foundation of over $2 million.
She took the money from her husband's charity. She called it a loan to be paid back. Federal prosecutor Philip Halpern called it money laundering and says she won and lost a staggering amount.
We're talking about billions with a B. It's not against the law to bankrupt yourself. The violation was that she raided that charity of $2 million.
For O'Connor, now penniless, it's a public humiliation.
That I never meant to hurt the city of Denver.
In an emotional press conference afterward, she introduced a concept that would resonate with anyone who's ever battled addiction. The idea that she had become two different people. The tumor defense raised eyebrows among some, but neurologists have long documented how brain tumors can dramatically alter personality and decision-making.
In the centers of the brain that affect and control logic, reasoning, and most importantly, judgment.
Was it the whole explanation? Probably not, but was it part of this perfect storm that destroyed one woman's life? Definitely possible. Unlike table poker, where skill matters, video poker machines give players just enough control to feel like they're making meaningful choices, but make no mistake, over time, the house edge is mathematical certainty. You cannot beat these machines long term. Not even if you're a mathematical genius. Not even if you're the former mayor of San Diego. Where is she now? Today, Maureen O'Connor lives quietly with her twin sister in La Jolla. As always, remember to be stingy when gambling because, as Maureen O'Connor discovered the hard way when the casino rolls out the red carpet, it's not because they plan on losing.
I used to tell everybody it was the Hope-mobile going to the casino, and it was the Broke-mobile coming home. I call it the Blue Nowhere.
New Blue Nowhere.
You just get in there and you stay there. And you stay there to basically till the money's gone.
Which you did.
Yes, I did. I'm not proud of it, but I did.
How much would you lose in a day?
I could lose more than 100,000 in a day.
In one day?
Yes.
Meet Ronald Page, 55 years old, 30 years working at General Motors, average bank balance, a whopping $100. This is the guy who managed to turn a bank error into the most expensive gambling spree in Detroit history. Picture this. August 1st, 2009, Ronald walks into Greektown Casino, same as he's done hundreds of times before. He's been living paycheck to paycheck, gambling his small winnings and losses between $2 and $50,000 at a time. Nothing crazy. Just your typical retiree burning through his pension. But today's different. He slides his Bank of America card into the ATM, types in his usual withdrawal amount, the machine whirs. Then something magical happens. It spits out way more cash than he expected. Ronald's account, thanks to some cosmic bank glitch, has been switched to pay all status. Translation? Unlimited overdrafts. Most people would call the bank, report the error, be responsible adults. Ronald Page is not most people. Instead, he does what any rational human being would do when handed the keys to an infinite money machine. He withdraws $312,000 in one day at one casino. But why stop there? That same afternoon, he strolls over to MGM Grand and pulls out another $51,727 because apparently $300,000 wasn't enough to satisfy his sudden appetite for financial destruction. For 17 glorious days, Ronald lives like a king. A very stupid king who doesn't understand basic mathematics or consequences. Picture him at the slot machines, feeding thousands into those flashing lights. Blackjack tables where he's throwing around chips like confetti. Poker games where he's betting more in one hand than most people make in a year. August 5th, he's back at Greektown, pulls out another 60 grand, loses it all on craps before dinner. August 10th, $80,000 disappears into the Vegas trip he probably shouldn't have taken. August 15th, another $57,000 gone at Motor City Casino. The man's on a mission to single-handedly fund Detroit's gambling industry. Meanwhile, Bank of America's computers are probably having a collective nervous breakdown. But Ronald, he's living his best life, completely oblivious to the mathematical impossibility of his situation. Then comes August 18th, the party's over. Ronald walks up to his favorite ATM at Greektown, confident as ever. He punches in $52,000. Just another Tuesday for our financial genius. But this time, the machine says, no, denied. Account frozen. Confused but determined, he drives to Motor City Casino the next day. Tries to withdraw $51,400. Denied again. Reality crashes down faster than his account balance. August 21st, Bank of America calls. They're not happy. Turns out Ronald's account is overdrawn by over $1.5 million. They want their money back, all of it, immediately. Ronald's response? What money? Because here's the irony. Our mastermind didn't stash away a single dollar. Every penny of that $1.5 million got fed into slot machines, lost at card tables, and burned through like he was trying to set a world record for financial stupidity. The FBI gets involved. Court papers reveal the extent of his gambling addiction. From January 2009 to February 2010, this man was a casino regular in Detroit and Vegas. His Bank of America account was basically a gambling expense account. March 7th, 2012, Ronald pleads guilty to theft of bank funds. The government wants 15 months in prison and full restitution. They also recommend banning him from all casinos, racetracks, and anywhere else gambling happens. Because apparently giving someone with a gambling problem unlimited access to money they don't have is like handing matches to a pyromaniac in a fireworks factory. Ronald Page, the man who turned a bank error into a masterclass in how not to handle free money. 15 months in prison, $1.5 million in debt, and probably a lifetime ban from every casino in America. The moral of the story? When life hands you a banking error, maybe don't bet it all on red. Remember to get your gambling tracker toolkit in the description. Until next time, remember to be stingy when gambling. Now this is one of the largest gambling losses ever reported. A high-stakes player loses an unbelievable $167 million. In 2005, a single customer walked into the MGM Grand in Las Vegas and proceeded to spend $162 million across just 3 years. His name was Ausaf Omar Siddiqui, and he wasn't some trust fund billionaire or tech mogul. He was a Fry's Electronics executive making $225,000 a year who had figured out the most expensive way possible to pay off gambling debts. Born in 1965, Omar Siddiqui began his career at Fry's Electronics in 1988, just 3 years after the electronics retailer was founded. Starting as a computer salesman, he possessed what colleagues described as a strong ability to persuade, and carried himself as a confident individual, a business person with acumen. By 2003, this persuasive power had catapulted him to vice president of merchandising and operations, overseeing all purchasing decisions for the company's 34 stores and supervising 120 employees. But Omar had developed a problem that his $225,000 salary couldn't support. Somewhere along the way, the ambitious executive had discovered the intoxicating world of high-stakes gambling, and by the mid-2000s, he wasn't just playing, he was hemorrhaging money at a rate that defied logic. The casinos loved him, why wouldn't they? Here was a well-dressed, articulate businessman who bet $200,000 per hand at blackjack, played with machine-like speed, and never seemed to run out of money. To them, Omar Siddiqui wasn't a person with a problem. He was a golden goose that needed to be pampered, coddled, and kept happy at all costs. And pamper him, they did. The Venetian gave him a 7,000 square foot chairman's suite, complete with a fountain by the front door. 26 television screens throughout the suite ensured he never missed a moment of ESPN or Ultimate Fighting Championship matches, but it was the details that revealed just how far the casinos would go to keep their whales swimming in their waters. Omar's guest profile, a 7-page document detailing his every preference and quirk, read like the demands of a deranged dictator. Fiji water arranged in groups of 3, golden raisins and warmed mixed nuts, Aramis cologne and badger hair shaving brushes, Dom Perignon, rose champagne, and Kurosawa sake chilled and ready. The maids knew to scatter bowls of glitterati mentissimo peppermints throughout his suite, each adorned with a single rose. White vases were forbidden. Bad luck, apparently. His closet became a museum of obsessive organization. Socks had to be 70% silk and 30% cotton. His jeans required dry cleaning. Starch and creasing were absolutely prohibited. Shoes were polished and returned, with laces tied, and wooden inserts replaced. And God help the hotel employee who approached him from behind. That was grounds for immediate dismissal from his presence. The shopping lists read like a wealthy man's fever dream. Philips Norelco body groom shavers, Sonicare Elite toothbrushes, Clinique facial scrub, and Trojan Magnum condoms. Hotel employees scrambled between Saks Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom, and even Target to fulfill his demands. For breakfast, it was Earl Grey tea with exactly 4 packets of sugar and 3/4 teaspoon cream, 3 eggs over easy, hash browns, sourdough toast, and a precise arrangement of papaya, mango, and pineapple. But here's where the story gets truly disturbing. Omar never drank while gambling. The casino stocked his suite with Grey Goose, Crown Royal, Johnny Walker Black, Dom Perignon, and expensive cognac. But at the tables, he was stone cold sober. This wasn't some drunken businessman making bad decisions. This was calculated, methodical destruction. The butler notes were particularly revealing. No one is to enter the suite unescorted or unannounced except the butler assigned. When Omar entertained, the butler will need to maintain a presence, if not in the room, then in the pantry with the door open so requests can be heard. They knew when to disappear too. He will dismiss you by requesting privacy. He will be very direct with this request. Leave until he contacts you. These weren't the whims of a successful businessman unwinding after a hard week. These were the demands of a man whose entire identity had become wrapped up in being treated like royalty by people who were systematically bleeding him dry. Because that's exactly what was happening between 2005 and 2008. The IRS tracked $167.8 million that flowed through Omar's secret company, PC International. But where was this money coming from? A man making $225,000 a year doesn't have $167 million lying around. The answer lay in Omar's position at Fry's Electronics and the elaborate scheme he'd constructed to fund his addiction. As vice president of merchandising, Omar controlled which products appeared on Fry's shelves. He convinced company executives that eliminating sales representatives would save money. He'd act as the middleman himself. The scheme was breathtakingly simple. Vendors like Phoebe Micro Inc., which sold $80 million worth of goods to Fry's between 2003 and 2008, would give Fry's a $4 million discount while secretly paying Omar's company $24 million. Everyone got what they wanted. Fry's got their discount, vendors got guaranteed shelf space, and Omar got his casino money. The IRS documented 6 instances where Omar received between $1 million and $5 million from vendors, then paid nearly identical amounts to casinos within 1 to 3 days. This wasn't a businessman with a gambling problem, this was a gambling addict with a business problem. using his corporate position to systematically fund his addiction. Some vendors tried to resist. Fastmac, a small Santa Clara battery manufacturer, sent representatives to pitch their superior Apple computer batteries to Omar in 2006. Instead of discussing product quality, Omar tossed their battery onto a credenza and launched into his sales pitch. $20,000 for prominent advertising placement and favorable shelf space. Instead of us trying to sell our product, it turned to him selling us on why we should pay him, recalled Abi Vakil, now the company's vice president. It was very weird. I could have been selling anything. It didn't make any difference to him. Vakil refused the deal. Fry's never stocked Fastmac batteries. He was straight out of GQ magazine, Vakil remembered. He was just oozing arrogance. But arrogance couldn't mask the mathematical reality of Omar's situation. Even with tens of millions in kickbacks, he was losing faster than he could steal. The casinos, meanwhile, were doing everything in their power to keep him playing. Despite his record of debts, in 2004, the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas gave him $1 million in credit. He played blackjack and hit a losing streak. But when he bet his last $50,000, his luck turned. He ended up winning back the million and more. He took his few million and walked out and used the money to pay back another casino. In another instance, in November 2007, Siddiqui walked into Planet Hollywood, wrote out a $3 million check for chips, and sat down to play Baccarat, bypassing the beautiful blackjack dealers and lingerie in the pleasure pit. Omar sure loved his pleasure, and the casino knew this. His luck ran out, and he wrote another $5 million check. Within hours, he lost his entire stake. When Planet Hollywood tried to collect, Siddiqui's checks bounced. This willful ignorance was the industry's standard operating procedure. They built detailed psychological profiles of their whales, tracked every preference and quirk, but claimed complete ignorance about where the money originated. They knew Omar was losing $8 million in single sessions, knew he had markers all over town, knew he was jumping between casinos to pay off debts with winnings from other venues, and they kept the credit flowing. The House of Cards finally collapsed in October 2008. A Fry's employee walked into Omar's unoccupied office and found spreadsheets detailing millions of dollars in secret vendor payments. Instead of confronting Omar, the employee gathered the documents and contacted the IRS. On December 19, 2008, 24 federal agents descended on Fry's corporate headquarters. They walked Omar out in handcuffs while stunned coworkers watched their vice president disappear forever. The man who had been treated like royalty in Las Vegas was now wearing the bright orange uniform of the Santa Clara County Jail. The criminal complaint painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning years. Omar had convinced Fry's management to eliminate traditional vendor representatives, positioning himself as the cost-saving middleman. Instead, he created PC International, a fraudulent company whose sole purpose was receiving kickbacks, and began charging commissions that would have made a loan shark blush. At his arraignment, Omar stood silent in his jail-issued orange shirt, the designer suits and meticulous grooming replaced by the standard issue appearance of the accused. U.S. District Court Judge Richard Seaborg set bail at $300,000 and imposed a condition that must have felt like the ultimate punishment. Nevada was off limits. "I know you do a great deal of travel to Las Vegas," Seaborg noted. "That's not allowed anymore. Nevada is off limits. No more private jets, no more chairman suites, no more butlers arranging his golden raisins in groups of 3. The scope of Omar's addiction became clearer during legal proceedings. Court records revealed that 7 casinos had sued him since 1999, seeking to recover at least $33 million. Though in 2003, Clark County prosecutors had pursued him for $12 million in gambling debts. The IRS had slapped an $18.5 million tax lien on his property in 2006. The state added a $3 million lien in 2007. Despite all these red flags, the lawsuits, the liens, the unpaid markers, the casinos continued extending credit. They were trapped in their own logic. If they cut off a whale, he might swim to a competitor's waters. Better to keep him gambling and hope he hit a winning streak that would pay everyone back. By 2009, as Omar's case moved through the courts, the full extent of the damage became apparent. Court records indicated he had gambled away as much as $167 million over the previous decade. At just 2 casinos, MGM Grand and the Venetian, he had spent $162 million in 3 years. His annual salary could have funded maybe 6 months of his gambling habit. The math was devastating and undeniable. Omar had created one of the most efficient money laundering operations in corporate fraud history, using his position at Fry's to systematically convert vendor kickbacks into casino chips. The vendors got their shelf space, the casinos got their action, and Omar got to maintain the illusion that he was a successful businessman rather than a desperate addict stealing millions to fund his habit. In February 2010, facing 30 years in prison on 9 felony counts, Omar finally pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of money laundering. His attorney, Paul Meltzer, painted him as a victim of his own addiction. He said Mr. Siddiqui's crimes were not caused by greed or criminal disposition, but out of desperation due to the enormous debts that resulted from his gambling addiction. The defense blamed the casinos for enabling the addiction. According to court filings, Omar's first credit line was $50,000, which quickly jumped to $1 million, then escalated to multiple lines totaling $30 million. The casinos fed the addiction, Meltzer wrote, by lavishing him with free wine, gourmet meals, hotel suites, and private jets. But the most damning detail was this. Omar didn't enjoy any of it. To the contrary, it became increasingly stressful as he found himself deeper in debt to the casinos with no way out other than to hope for a successful gambling weekend. The luxury suites, the Dom Perignon, the butler service, none of it brought pleasure. It had become work, a desperate performance to maintain access to the credit that fed his addiction. They built the trap, baited it with luxury, and then claimed surprise when their carefully cultivated whale self-destructed. The casinos kept their profits. The vendors paid their inflated commissions. Fry's lost tens of millions, and Omar lost everything: his career, his freedom, his future, and any chance of the respect he had so desperately sought in those gilded cages of Las Vegas. In the end, the house always wins. As always, remember to be stingy when gambling. Next up, being a billionaire doesn't guarantee you'll beat the house. Here's the businessman who learned that lesson the hard way. In May 2006, Harry Kakavas walked into Crown Casino and proceeded to bet $164 million in 5.5 hours. He wasn't winning. He was hemorrhaging money at a rate of $30 million per hour, playing baccarat hands that took mere seconds to complete. By the time he stumbled out, he'd lost millions more in what casino staff described as a frenetic gambling session. This wasn't an anomaly. Between June 2005 and August 2006, just 14 months, Kakavas would wager nearly $1.5 billion at Crown Casino, betting up to $300,000 per hand. His total losses exceeded $30 million, wiping out everything he'd built as one of Australia's top real estate salesmen on the Gold Coast. But here's where the story gets interesting. Kakavas didn't just lose his fortune and walk away in shame. He sued Crown Casino for $20 million, claiming they deliberately exploited his pathological gambling addiction. And the casino, owned by billionaire James Packer, was worried enough about losing that they sent lawyers to negotiate a settlement before the verdict. They needn't have worried. The Australian legal system had a very clear message for Harry Kakavas and every other gambling addict in the country. You're on your own. Harry Kakavas was a force of nature in Gold Coast real estate. Brash, confident, loquacious, the kind of salesman who could convince you to buy a house you didn't need at a price you couldn't afford. He made a fortune in the booming Australian property market, and by the mid-2000s he was living the high life. But he had a secret that went back decades. Kakavas was a compulsive gambler, and his addiction was severe enough that he'd already committed crimes to feed it. In 1994, he defrauded Asanda Finance Corporation of $286,000, money he quickly lost at Crown Casino. He spent 4 months in jail in 1998 for that fraud, and the same year faced armed robbery charges that were eventually dismissed for insufficient evidence. The Asanda fraud became a turning point, or at least it should have been. Kakavas admitted he had a problem. Crown Casino's own executive, Bill Horman, a former deputy commissioner of Victoria Police, recommended that Kakavas exclude himself from the casino. Horman even referred Kakavas to Crown's psychologist for treatment. During Kakavas' 1998 trial, Horman gave a statement acknowledging all of this. Crown knew Harry Kakavas was a gambling addict. This fact would become central to everything that followed. After his release from jail, Kakavas tried to control his addiction, the only way he knew how. He got himself banned from virtually every casino in the country. He self-excluded from Crown Melbourne. He was banned from Star City Casino in Sydney in 2000 by NSW police. He systematically locked himself out of the very venues that had destroyed his finances and nearly his freedom. For a few years, it seemed to work. Kakavas focused on his real estate business, rebuilding his wealth and reputation on the Gold Coast, but in Las Vegas, where he still gambled occasionally, someone important was watching. In November 2004, Kerry Packer, the legendary Australian media mogul and one of the world's most famous high rollers, spotted Kakavas at the tables in Las Vegas. Packer didn't just note it and move on. He picked up the phone and called John Williams, Crown Casino's chief operating officer and son of Lloyd Williams, the casino's founder. The question was simple. Why is Harry Kakavas losing his money in America when he should be losing it in Melbourne? It was a good question from Crown's perspective. Kakavas was exactly the kind of whale they wanted, someone with deep pockets, a proven inability to stop gambling, and a taste for the highest stakes available. The fact that he was legally banned from their property was apparently a minor inconvenience. By this time, Kakavas' self-exclusion order from Crown had been lifted at his own request, but the casino was still barring him from entry, supposedly because he might cause trouble. More significantly, the Star City ban made it illegal under Victoria's Casino Control Act of 1991 for Crown to allow Kakavas into their Melbourne casino, illegal to send him promotional material, and illegal to let him keep any winnings if he gambled there. Crown decided to ignore all of this. They had a whale to land. Bill Horman, the same executive who had recommended Kakavas exclude himself 6 years earlier, who had referred him for psychological treatment, who had testified about his gambling problem, was now central to the decision to invite him back. The man who knew better than almost anyone at Crown that Harry Kakavas was a pathological gambler became his primary contact for luring him back to Melbourne. The inducements Crown offered were staggering: free luxury accommodation in their finest suites, free food and drink, no matter how expensive, free limousine travel whenever he wanted, and the crown jewel, a private jet to ferry him from his Gold Coast home to Melbourne and back, ensuring he could gamble whenever the urge struck. They even flew him to the Philippines and back for a holiday, all expenses paid naturally. On several occasions, Crown gave Kakavas up to $50,000 in cash as lucky money delivered in a cardboard box as he boarded the plane to Melbourne. The total value of these inducements approached $10 million, and they worked perfectly. Kakavas returned to Crown's tables in late 2004, and what followed was 14 months of financial devastation on a scale that defied comprehension. He gravitated toward Baccarat, a game with terrible odds that required no skill whatsoever, just money and the willingness to lose it quickly. He bet $300,000 per hand, playing at a speed that made the casino's eyes light up with dollar signs. During one session, he lost $2.3 million in 28 minutes. Let that sink in. $2.3 million in less than half an hour. That's $82,000 per minute, roughly $1,370 per second, gone on a game that takes seconds to play. The May 2006 session, the one where he wagered $164 million in 5.5 hours, became legendary among casino staff. This wasn't a man enjoying himself. This wasn't entertainment. This was addiction in its purest, most destructive form, and Crown Casino was feeding it with both hands. Kakavas borrowed millions from banks to keep gambling. He borrowed from friends, convincing them they were funding his successful real estate ventures when the money was actually going straight to Crown's tables. He borrowed from family members who trusted him. Every relationship in his life became another potential source of gambling capital, and through it all, Crown kept the private jet fueled, kept the luxury suite ready, kept the inducements flowing. They knew about the Star City ban, a fact that would later be confirmed in court. They knew he was a problem gambler, they just didn't care. By August 2006, Harry Kakavas had lost over $30 million, everything he had and much more. The real estate fortune was gone, the borrowed millions were gone, his business was collapsing under the weight of debts he couldn't possibly repay, and Crown Casino had made a killing. But Kakavas wasn't done fighting. In what would become one of Australia's most significant legal battles over gambling addiction, he filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Crown, claiming they had acted unconscionably by exploiting his disability. His legal team, led by Alan Myers, one of Australia's top QCs, believed they had an excellent case. The argument was straightforward. Crown knew Kakavas was a pathological gambler. They had documentation going back to 1998. They knew he was legally banned from Star City. They knew it was illegal to allow him into their casino. They had deliberately offered him inducements worth millions specifically to lure him back to their tables. And then they had watched him lose $30 million while doing absolutely nothing to intervene. If that wasn't unconscionable conduct, what was? Crown appeared worried. In the weeks before the verdict, the casino sent its corporate counsel, Guy Jallan, to Melbourne to offer a settlement. James Packer, Crown's biggest shareholder, was understood to be keen to deal. The legal team seemed confident they might actually lose this one. Then James Packer changed his mind, and as it turned out, that was a very good call. On December 12, 2009, Justice David Harper delivered his verdict in the Victorian Supreme Court. Crown Casino was not liable for Harry Kakavas' losses. The ruling was devastating, not just for Kakavas, but for every problem gambler in Australia. Harper's judgment was a masterclass in setting impossible standards for victims while excusing predatory behavior from casinos. He acknowledged that Crown had broken the law by ignoring the Star City ban. He found that the $10 million in inducements had played an important part in attracting Kakavas to Crown. He even stated that, in my opinion, it is clear that Mr. Kakavas was a problem, and indeed very possibly a pathological gambler. But none of it mattered. Harper ruled that Crown couldn't have known in 2004 that Kakavas still had a gambling problem because he seemed rich, tough, and in control. Never mind that Bill Horman knew everything about Kakavas' history. Never mind the psychological treatment, never mind the self-exclusion orders. Never mind the criminal conviction for fraud committed to fund gambling, Kakavas looked successful, so Crown was entitled to assume he was fine. The judge's logic became even more twisted when discussing addiction itself. Harper concluded that even pathological gamblers should not be compensated for choices they have freely made. He argued that, had Mr. Kakavas wished to escape the enticements of the casino, he could have done so with ease. He could have arranged for self-exclusion. This completely ignored the fact that Kakavas had already tried self-exclusion. He'd banned himself from virtually every casino in Australia. Crown had deliberately circumvented these safeguards with their inducements and private jets, but Harper was unmoved. He believed Kakavas' behavior should have been valiant, vigilant, and disciplined, precisely the qualities a pathological gambler lacks. Harper was also remarkably critical of Crown's witnesses. He stated he was not impressed with much of the evidence given by Mr. Horman, yet he still believed Horman on key issues that seemed implausible at best. Horman claimed not to know that Kakavas had been treated for gambling addiction in 1998, even though it was Horman who had referred him for treatment. Harper accepted this claim, which was central to Crown's defense. Perhaps most tellingly, Harper condemned Crown's processes as a pathetic excuse for world's best practice, adding that Crown did not deserve to portray itself as a world leader in responsible gambling. Yet these failings translated into no liability whatsoever. Why? Because Harper fundamentally believed that casinos and clubs should have no duty to prevent problem gamblers from harming themselves. "The seeds of tyranny," he wrote, "are to be found in the footsteps of those who profess to know more about what is good for the subjects of their attention than do the subjects themselves." In other words, problem gamblers are on their own, and requiring casinos to help them would be playing God. Kakavas was stunned into silence. His normally brash, confident demeanor vanished. His legal team was equally shocked. They'd taken the case on contingency because they were sure of victory, but Harper's ruling sent a clear message to every gambling addict in Australia. The courts will not help you, no matter how badly the casinos behave. Tim McCorriston from Gamblers Help testified about a senior policeman with a long, successful career who stumbled into problem gambling and lost everything. He was estranged from all his family members. His wife he divorced, his 3 children refused to stay in contact with him, he lost all of his assets, and in the end, he attempted to commit suicide by gassing himself in his car. But the Kakavas ruling made it clear, casinos and clubs have no legal obligation to care about any of this. They can identify problem gamblers, track their losses, watch them destroy their lives, and face zero consequences as long as the gambler appears to be making rational decisions. The gaming industry celebrated. A Crown spokesman issued a brief statement. Crown welcomes the unanimous decision of the High Court. The Victorian Council for Gambling Regulation, which had observed the entire trial, agreed to a 43% increase in Crown's table numbers while the case was still running. Victoria's politicians formally approved Crown's expansion just days after Harper's original verdict. For Harry Kakavas, the consequences were catastrophic. By 2011, he'd filed for bankruptcy, listing $137 million in debt. $20 million was owed to Las Vegas casinos. Additional gambling debts in Connecticut and Britain were listed as unknown amounts. He owed money to at least 5 fries vendors, faced $15 million in state tax liens, and was drowning in legal fees to lawyers who'd taken his case on contingency. The man who had once made a fortune selling houses on the Gold Coast, who had been wooed with private jets and $50,000 cardboard boxes of cash, was financially obliterated. His real estate business was destroyed. His relationships with friends and family who'd lent him money. Richard Brading, principal solicitor at Sydney's Wesley Community Legal Service, argued that clubs and casinos should be required by law to identify problem gamblers, monitor their gambling, and ban them when they reach a point of crisis. The gaming industry's response was that you can't identify such people with certainty, a claim contradicted by their own software systems. The 2009 Productivity Commission draft report suggested tough new measures, giving problem gamblers a statutory right to seek damages if casinos fail to enforce self-exclusion orders, supply alcohol to intoxicated gamblers, or help self-excluded people gamble. It recommended allowing gamblers to set spending limits and cutting maximum hourly losses on poker machines from $1,200 to $120. The gaming industry reacted with horror. Leagues Clubs Australia warned that jobs will be lost, sporting and social amenities would be diminished, community funding would be severely affected. They claimed only 5 or 6 NRL teams would survive. The message was clear. Protecting problem gamblers would hurt the economy, and when the stakes are billions of dollars in annual revenue and substantial contributions to state budgets, problem gamblers don't stand a chance. About 10% of Australia's state revenue comes from gambling. Cracking down on exploitation would reduce that take, and politicians weren't about to sacrifice tax revenue to save addicts. The casino that broke the law to lure him back, that ignored a legal ban, that watched him lose $30 million in 14 months without intervening once, faced no consequences whatsoever. They kept their gaming license. They paid no fines, no penalties, no restitution. Gavin Phaneuf was everything the gambling industry dreams of: successful, wealthy, and completely unaware he was walking into their carefully laid trap. Like, by day, the 41-year-old financial planner from Sydney's North Shore was making headlines for helping cancer victims secure insurance payouts. His professional reputation was spotless, his income steady at $130,000 annually. But what started as casual pub bets on horse racing was about to become an $8 million Australian dollars feeding frenzy for Australia's betting giants. It started innocently enough. A few drinks with friends, a bet on the horses. When mobile betting launched, Phaneuf downloaded the TAB app like millions of other Australians. What he didn't know was that he'd just painted a target on his back within months. TAB's algorithms had him figured out. His betting patterns, his losses, his increasing desperation, all of it was being tracked, analyzed, and monetized. Soon came the golden ticket. VIP status. The treatment was intoxicating. A personal customer service manager who called regularly, exclusive events, bonus bets, reward systems that turned every deposit into a celebration, free tickets to major sporting events. The message was clear: you're special, you're valued, you're winning. But Phaneuf wasn't winning. He was bleeding money. In just 6 months during 2017, Phaneuf lost $1.5 million. On a single Friday afternoon in March, he placed 3 simultaneous $25,000 bets on different races. All 3 lost within an hour. His VIP manager called that evening, not to check if he was okay, but to offer bonus bets for the weekend. TAB's transaction records tell the devastating story. From September 2016 to June 2018, Phaneuf made 194 deposits of $10,000 or more. 23 withdrawals exceeded $10,000, with 10 of those above $50,000. He was cycling money like a Wall Street trader, except every trade was a loss waiting to happen. The math was simple. A man earning $130,000 annually was pumping millions through a betting account. Any reasonable company would have asked questions. TAB didn't. They were too busy counting their profits. By May 2018, even TAB couldn't ignore the obvious anymore. They finally asked Phaneuf for proof of income after he'd already lost $3.9 million with them. Panicked and unable to explain his funding sources, Phaneuf avoided their questions. Weeks later, his account was frozen. For a brief moment, it seemed like his nightmare was over. That moment of relief for Gavin, that's precisely when the predatory cycle often intensifies. Betting companies thrive on exploiting vulnerability, turning every loss into another opportunity. You see, they know your patterns better than you do. But what if you knew their game? What if you had a system to see your own habits clearly, to identify your triggers and reclaim control? That's why I created the Ultimate Gambling Tracker Toolkit. Our automated Excel and Google Sheets trackers give you crystal clear insights into your real wins, losses, and the time you spent gambling, turning raw data into undeniable patterns. And for deep, mindful reflection, our printable PDF pack helps you analyze triggers and stick to goals away from the screen. Whether you're struggling with gambling addiction yourself, the Ultimate Gambling Tracker Toolkit puts the control back in your hands. Find the link to claim yours in the description below. Then the phone rang. Phaneuf was standing on a train platform when a stranger called. The voice belonged to someone from Ladbrokes who somehow had his personal number. The caller claimed he used to work at TAB and could offer a superior experience with thousands in bonus bets.
And nearly $4 million later, they did send a letter after that time saying that I needed to provide some information and they were going to close the account. And for me, that was the end of it with them. He set up an account in a different name. He put about $20,000, I think it was, $10,000 to $20,000 in the account for me to try them out, and promised significant free betting money for every deposit that I put on.
Within hours, Fnef had a new account under the fake name Gavin Lamb. No identification required, no questions asked. The hunt had found fresh territory. Over 20 months, Ladbrokes extracted another $700,000 from Fnef. Not once did they verify his identity or ask about his income source. The third call came as Fnef walked past his letterbox after taking his kids to the park. Bet Easy was on the line. In 45 minutes, the time it takes to watch a sitcom, they had him signed up with $50,000 in bonus bets loaded into his account. He lost it all before reaching his front door. BetEasy treated Fnef like gambling royalty. In his first 3 months alone, they handed him $1 million in bonus money. He matched it with his own deposits and lost every cent. They kept the bonuses flowing. Over 16 months, BetEasy sucked another $3.6 million from Fnef, bringing his total losses to $8 million. The pattern was always the same. Massive losses followed by congratulatory calls offering more opportunities to win it back. When industry insiders later testified about these practices, one described problem gamblers as being traded like property between companies. Finally, in April of 2020, Fnef's double life finally collapsed. The money he'd been gambling wasn't just his own, a fact that's now the subject of a New South Wales police investigation. He faces potential jail time for fraud. The timing reveals the industry's stunning negligence. In February 2017, just as Fnef's gambling was spiraling completely out of control, Tab's parent company, Tabcorp, paid a record $45 million fine to Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Centre for failing to monitor suspicious transactions and report potential money laundering. Even after paying this massive penalty for not watching their customers closely enough, Tabcorp allowed Fnef to gamble away another $3 million over the next 18 months. Their compliance failures weren't just bureaucratic oversights, they were profit opportunities. For the betting companies, everything worked exactly as designed. They identified a high-value problem gambler, maximized his losses through VIP treatment and psychological manipulation, then passed his details to competitors when regulations finally forced them to act. The UK's gambling regulator found that major betting agencies derive 83% of their deposits from just 2% of customers, the VIPs like Fnef, who can't stop losing. In Australia, these companies operate with impunity under the Northern Territory's light touch regulation. Meanwhile, Fnef's children will grow up in a different world than the one he planned for them. His marriage bears the weight of years of deception. The people whose money he stole to feed his addiction face their own financial ruin. The system worked perfectly. Remember, if you want to take control of and track your gambling habits, to grab the gambling tracker in the description or pinned comment. As always, remember to be stingy when gambling.
The gambling options are everywhere and they're every minute. It's fast betting, it's fast transfers, and it's fast losses. Between those two companies, I received $3.5 million of free betting money. Parents, there's not a 13-year-old today that hasn't watched a game of sport without seeing gambling ads. Check their phones, because they're next.
Next up, Stu Ungar, probably the most famous on this list. One casino trip, millions on the line, and a staggering $30 million lost. Here's what went wrong. Meet Stu Ungar, the poker prodigy who conquered the casino world with a mind sharper than a card shark's teeth, then lost it all faster than a bad beat on the river. This isn't your typical gambling fairy tale. The skinny kid from New York dominated the felt like nobody before him, winning 3 World Series of Poker championships when most legends were lucky to win one. But here's the kicker. The same brilliant mind that could read opponents like open books couldn't read his own self-destruction. From $1 million wins to dying broke in a $48 motel room, it's the ultimate Vegas cautionary tale. Las Vegas, 1998. A maid knocks on the door of room 6 at the Oasis Motel. Not exactly the Bellagio. No answer. She enters to find a gaunt, sickly man lying motionless in his wallet $800 cash. This wasn't just any down-on-his-luck gambler. This was Stu Ungar, aka The Kid, the man who had won and lost more money at cards than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. 3-time World Series of Poker champion, genius, legend, and in the end, just another sad Vegas story. The crazy thing? Stu never set out to be a poker player. His first love was gin rummy, a game he absolutely demolished by age 14. Growing up in Manhattan's Lower East Side, young Stewie was the son of a bar owner and small-time loan shark. Not exactly Disneyland, but one hell of a classroom for a kid with a photographic memory and a gift for cards. By 10, he was beating adults. By 14, he was winning more money than his teachers made. School? Who needs it when you're pulling in hundreds of dollars a day playing cards? Stu dropped out at 15, and the New York underground gambling scene became his real education. But here's what happens when you're too good. People stop playing with you. By his early 20s, Stu had developed such a reputation in gin rummy that nobody would touch him. Literally, he'd walk into a card room and people would walk out. Game over. So in 1977, Stu did what countless dreamers, schemers, and desperate souls have done for decades. He headed to Las Vegas, the place where money changes hands faster than cards. Picture a skinny Jewish kid from New York who looks about 14 years old, walks into Dunes Casino with a bankroll and unshakable confidence. Within a week, he'd won over $100,000 playing gin. Within a month, he'd made so much noise that, once again, nobody would play him. Funny thing about Vegas, though, there's always another game, and the biggest game in town was poker. In 1980, Stu entered the World Series of Poker main event, the championship.
Ace 3-5, different suits, John's first act, and here he goes again, right away.
Professional poker players laughed. Who was this kid? They weren't laughing when he won the whole damn thing. At 27, he became the youngest world champion in history. Buy-in, $10,000. Prize, $365,000. But Stu wasn't playing for the money, he was playing for recognition. And then, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, he won again the very next year. Back-to-back championships, something nobody had ever done. The money poured in faster than Stu could spend it. His days of poverty were over, custom suits, a new Corvette every year, $15,000 worth of watches, tipping cocktail waitresses $1,000 for bringing coffee, high roller suites comped by casinos eager to keep him playing. Stu didn't just beat the casino, he became the attraction. People would crowd around just to watch him play, to witness the uncanny way he'd stare down opponents and call out their exact cards. His poker strategy was unlike anything Vegas had seen. Where most pros played a calculated, conservative game, Stu was relentlessly aggressive. He didn't wait for good cards, he created opportunities, forcing opponents into impossible decisions. His reads were supernatural. A change in breathing, a slight twitch, the way someone stacked their chips. Stu saw everything, processed it instantly, and exploited it ruthlessly. Add his photographic memory, which helped him track cards with computer-like precision, and you had the perfect card-playing machine. However, the thing about Vegas is, it doesn't just offer gambling, it offers everything that goes with it. The drinks, the women, the parties, and the drugs, especially the drugs. Stu discovered cocaine around 1982. Like everything else in his life, he didn't do it halfway. Cocaine made him feel invincible. He could play for days without sleep, his already brilliant mind racing even faster. But what looks like a superpower is actually a curse. The man who could calculate complex odds in seconds couldn't see that he was on a collision course with disaster. The casino was happy to help him self-destruct. They comped his room, his food, his drinks, whatever kept him at the tables, and Stu obliged by betting increasingly insane amounts. Not just on poker, but on everything. Sports, horses, dice, anything with odds. Here's the brutal truth about gambling. Poker rewards skill. Most other games reward the house, and Stu was dumping his poker winnings into games that were slowly but surely bleeding him dry. By the late 80s, the casinos that once rolled out red carpets started avoiding Stu. Not because he was winning too much, but because he was a liability, a walking disaster. The cocaine had ravaged his nose, his health, his mind. Somewhere along the way, he'd gotten married, had a daughter, built a family he rarely saw. Everything came second to the cards and the drugs. When the money dried up, so did the friends. The 90s were a blur of brief comebacks and crushing relapses. He'd borrow money, win a tournament, then lose everything within days. His reputation went from the kid to the mess. Casinos banned him. Friends avoided him. Then, in 1997, something remarkable happened. 16 years after his last championship, looking like death warmed over, Stu convinced a friend to stake him the $10,000 entry fee for the World Series. No one gave him a chance. He barely had clothes on his back, much less the mental stamina for tournament poker. Then he won, again, his third World Championship, tying him with poker legend Johnny Moss for the most main event victories ever. The prize, $1 million. For a moment, it looked like the greatest comeback in gambling history. Stu promised it would be different this time. He'd invest the money, stay clean, rebuild his life. Hurry, 6 months later, the $1 million was gone, every cent. Back to drugs, back to sports betting, back to the same destructive patterns that had defined his life. On November 22, 1998, a maid at the Oasis Motel found Stu Ungar dead at age 45. She walked into Vegas with millions to gamble and left after losing $10 million. This is the story behind one of the biggest casino losses. Picture this. August 20th, 2022, high-limit room at the Wynn Hotel, Las Vegas. A woman in a Christian Dior sweater and yoga pants, Chanel purse in her lap, feeding $100 bills into a Dragon Link Golden Century slot machine like she's feeding quarters into a laundromat dryer. Her name was Sarah King, and she was about to witness someone else hit a $1.6 million jackpot on the machine she'd just abandoned. That moment, that single devastating moment, would set in motion the unraveling of one of the most brazen gambling frauds in recent memory. But the thing is, King's spiral had actually started months earlier. She just didn't know it yet.
Newport Beach attorney Sarah King is now accused of living the high life in a sumptuous suite at the luxurious Wynn Resort for 6 months and spending and gambling away more than $10 million of other people's money.
Sarah King wasn't your typical Vegas gambler. She was a 39-year-old attorney from the wealthy beach community of Encinitas, North San Diego County. Daughter of immigrant parents who ran a successful insurance company, Loyola Law School graduate, she had the credentials, the connections, the lifestyle, and she had a system. At least that's what she told herself. King kept a scrap of Wynn stationery in her purse with a code scribbled on it: $1 over $25, $2 over $50, $1 over $50, $2 over $100, $5 over $125. The pattern went on and on. She claimed she'd cracked the slot machine algorithm, figured out the order the machines wanted to pay out bonuses. You just needed $5,000 to $10,000 to see where the machine was at. Complete nonsense, of course, but King won enough, or convinced herself she won enough, to keep playing. She became a regular. Management gave her a Wynn chairman card, the highest level of perks reserved for players willing to drop tens of thousands daily. Complimentary meals, limo rides, access to the Wynn's private jet. Her favorite machine even had an AI-generated avatar of her that popped up whenever she won. She called herself the Slot Whisperer. Between March and November 2022, King spent more than $5 million on Wynn slot machines alone. Here's the problem. It wasn't her money. Let's rewind to 2019.
This is like a nightmare. You know, I still can't believe that I'm actually living this situation.
Yumiko Sturdivant says Sarah King was like family. She can't believe the beautiful 39-year-old Newport Beach attorney who ran a successful high-end loan company would scam her out of thousands of dollars.
King met Cameron Pahlavi at a business lunch in Costa Mesa near Newport Beach. Pahlavi wasn't just anyone. He was the grandson of Princess Ashraf of Iran, the last Shah's twin sister, former royalty living in exile after the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Their mutual friend at that lunch, a Hollywood producer named Joseph Medawar, who, fun fact, was a convicted con man. He'd pleaded guilty in 2006 to scamming millions from investors who thought he was developing a TV show about Homeland Security. Red flag? Absolutely. But King and Pahlavi hit it off. An affair began. King divorced her first husband in 2019 and married Pahlavi in February 2022. By then, King had already launched her scheme. In 2020, she opened King Family Lending, a one-woman operation that promised investors quick returns on high-end loans. The pitch was simple. Give King your money, she'll loan it to wealthy borrowers who put up luxury collateral, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, racing boats, even future earnings on NFL contracts. If the borrower defaults, the collateral covers the investment. One of her early marks was George Poulos, an Orange County dad. She took him to a garage filled with Ferraris, showed him the supposed collateral backing his $125,000 investment. Everything seemed legit for a few months. Then King stopped returning calls, stopped responding to texts. When Poulos finally tracked her down for lunch, she showed him her phone, a Wells Fargo account with $2 million in it. He never saw her again. Poulos sued in January 2022. Won a judgment for $125,000 plus nearly $100,000 in damages. King never showed up to court, never paid a dime. Around the time lawsuits started piling up in California, King and Pahlavi moved to Las Vegas. King claimed she wanted to expand her business. Pahlavi said Vegas was a great place to do it. And the truth? King had discovered that high-limit casino rooms were networking gold mines. You needed to play with the big boys to generate new clients. She later explained the high-limit rooms were a business opportunity. Translation: wealthy people gamble. Wealthy people are potential investors. Up and down the strip, King started using the name Mary Poppins to reserve prime tables at the best restaurants. She befriended Amal Obeid-Schmid, a Los Angeles trauma surgeon, took her on shopping trips and gossip sessions for months before making her pitch. I normally don't open up deals to people who aren't billionaires. Obeid-Schmid invested $100,000. King wired her the promised 10% return a month later. Classic con, pay the first returns to build trust. Obeid-Schmid reinvested, $400,000 this time. Then came the lies. When it was time to cash out, King faked a wire transfer, then ghosted her completely. But the biggest mark was Laurent Reiss, a Swiss banker and longtime friend of Pahlavi's from their hard-partying teenage years in Monaco. Reiss invested a staggering $10,258,500 into King's operation across 97 supposed loans. King sent him bank statements showing his investments were collecting interest on loans to third-party borrowers. Everything looked legitimate, professional, profitable. Except in November 2022, Reiss noticed typos on the bank stationery. Reiss traveled to Southern California to inspect the collateral King claimed was stored in Orange County warehouses. She couldn't produce any of it. Not the Ferraris, not the Lamborghinis, not the Audemars Piguet watches or Richard Mille timepieces or Patek Philippe chronographs. Nothing, because there was nothing. There never had been. King later admitted the truth. King Family Lending never initiated or financed a single loan. There were no third-party borrowers, no collateral, no luxury assets, just fabricated documents, fake names, and millions of dollars funneled directly into slot machines. In February 2023, Reiss filed a massive civil suit. Around the same time, Pahlavi made a curious decision. He moved to Morocco, a country, notably without an extradition treaty with the United States. Pahlavi insists he went to help a friend open a restaurant. King's victims weren't buying it. Meanwhile, back in Vegas, King was taking a bath in her comped villa when security pounded on the door. Obeid-Schmid had tipped off the Wynn that King was running scams on their casino floor. They kicked her out. Banned her permanently.
She's accused of blowing over $10 million of her former employer's money to fund her lavish lifestyle and a 6-month gambling binge while living at the Wynn Resort and Casino in Las Vegas.
Sarah has always been into the luxury life, very well-dressed, charismatic, very smart.
King, ever competitive, dyed her hair darker and wore a mask to sneak back to her favorite slot machine. The casino's AI facial recognition software flagged her immediately. A Wynn spokesperson confirmed she'll be arrested if she returns. By February, King was hiding in a West Hollywood 2-bedroom apartment she'd been renting for $8,000 a month. She arrived one day to find the door plastered with eviction notices, civil summonses, and a copy of Poulos' judgment. Her license to run King Family Lending revoked. Her law license under investigation by the California State Bar. Her debt? $11 million. Her net worth, according to court documents, $11.98. On June 12th, King filed a plea agreement in United States District Court, admitting to defrauding 5 investors out of $8 million. She agreed to pay back $8,785,045 and faces up to 23 years in federal prison. 8 days later, she wore Dior high heels to face a federal judge in Santa Ana and pleaded not guilty, a common legal strategy that forces the case to trial. She was released on a $5,000 bond secured by her father.
According to the suit, she used pictures like this with NFL superstars Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes to showcase her fake lifestyle and alleged connections. She's accused of fabricating loans using expensive cars, watches, even NFL contracts as collateral. Millions of dollars gone. In court documents, King claims she only has $11 left to her name.
One bad decision became another until even the mortgage money was on the line. This is how gambling cost him his home. The casino's quiet. Most of the blackjack tables are empty except for a few regulars nursing their drinks and playing the minimum. That's when he walks up to the high-limit room. Average-looking guy, maybe 45, wearing a button-down shirt and khakis like he just came from the bank, which it turns out he probably did. He's carrying a manila envelope thick with cash, and he sits down at the $1,000 minimum table like he owns the place. The dealer, an experienced woman who's seen everything. He opens the envelope and starts pulling out stacks of hundreds, clean, crisp bills still in bank bands. As soon as the cash hits the table, the floor supervisor is already on their way over. Standard protocol anytime someone buys in with a significant amount. The dealer doesn't touch anything yet. The supervisor puts on gloves, takes the envelope, and begins counting it out, band by band, under the eye of a second employee. Every bill is verified in full view of the cameras, $85,000. Even for this high-limit room, I mean, that's a serious buy-in. They jot down his information, matching the name on the ID to the paperwork. Once everything is logged, the dealer finally gets the nod to convert the cash to chips. He starts off conservative, $1,000 a hand. The cards are running neutral. He wins some, loses some. He's chatting with the dealer, relaxed, confident, talks about how he's been waiting for this moment for months. About maybe an hour in, things start shifting. He loses 3 hands in a row. Nothing dramatic, just bad luck. But instead of staying steady, he doubles his bet to 2,000, loses again. 4,000, loses again. Now he's betting 5,000 a hand, the table max, and you can see the change. The casual conversation stops, his shoulders tense up. He's gripping his cards harder than necessary. The dealer deals the next hand. He's got a 12, she's showing a 6. Basic strategy says, stay, let the dealer bust. But he's not thinking strategy anymore. He's thinking about all that money disappearing. 10, busted, 5,000 gone in seconds. He pushes another stack forward, another 5,000. His hands are starting to shake slightly, but he's trying to hide it. Gets dealt a 20, beautiful hand. Dealer shows a 9. He should be sitting pretty. Dealer flips her whole card, another 9, 18. He wins, but instead of being relieved, he looks frustrated. Like winning 5,000 back isn't enough to fix what's already gone wrong. This goes on for another 2 hours. The stack of hundreds gets smaller and smaller. Other players have come and gone, but he hasn't moved, hasn't eaten, hasn't taken a bathroom break, hasn't answered his phone the 3 times it's buzzed. By now, a small crowd has gathered just outside the high-limit room. People love watching high-stakes action, especially when someone's clearly in over their head. The pit boss is watching from across the room just in case this guy loses his cool. The guy's down to about 15,000 now. 70 grand gone in 3 hours. That's when the real desperation kicks in. He starts making insurance bets when he shouldn't. Splitting tens, something no sane blackjack player ever does. The dealer has to ask him twice if he's sure about some of these plays. The pit boss walks a little closer, keeping an eye on it. Moves like that sometimes signal something worse. Each decision gets worse. He's chasing every loss with a bigger bet, and the mathematics of blackjack are catching up with him fast. Down to 8,000, 5,000, 3,000. That's when time seems to slow down. He's got $3,000 left, enough for most people to live on for months. The dealer shuffles the cards, and you can hear every sound in the casino. The slot machines, the ice clinking in someone's drink, the distant sound of chips clicking at the poker tables. He pushes all of it forward, every last chip. All of it, he says quietly. The dealer hesitates. He nods. She deals the cards. He gets a 7 and a 9, 16, the worst possible hand in blackjack. Too high to hit safely, too low to beat much of anything. Dealer shows a 10. The entire table goes silent. Even the slot machines seem quieter. He stares at his cards. The card comes off the deck in slow motion. A 5, 21. For a split second, there's hope. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the miracle that turns it all around. The dealer flips her whole card, ace, 21, but in that moment of relief, he makes the final mistake. Instead of taking his 3,000 and walking away, instead of being grateful for the gift he just received, he pushes the chips right back out. This time he gets a 13. Dealer shows a king, 9, busted. Just like that, it's over. $85,000 gone in 4 hours. He sits there staring at the empty felt in front of him. Doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stares. The dealer doesn't know what to say. The other players are looking anywhere but at him. Finally, he looks up at the dealer. That was my mortgage money. I was supposed to pay off my house today. The dealer's face goes pale. The pit boss starts walking over. Could someone call me a ride? I don't have gas money to get home. The pit boss nods to security. They make the call. 20 minutes later, his ride arrives, walks toward the exit without looking back. It's a busy Saturday afternoon. That's when she walks in. Mid-50s, designer purse, and she picks a high-limit slot machine, one of the $25 a spin monsters that can drain your bank account faster than a divorce lawyer. She's playing aggressively, hitting the max bet button like she's trying to break it. The GSA working that section, let's call her Sarah, is keeping an eye on things. High-limit players get special attention, and this woman is definitely in that category. She's cycling through hundreds of dollars every few minutes, and her body language is getting tenser with each losing spin. Then it happens. She hits the max bet, $500, and the reels start spinning. Sarah watches from across the floor as the woman leans forward, completely focused on the screen. The reels stop, no match. $500 gone in 3 seconds. That's when the woman does something that Sarah has never seen before. She hits the call button. Sarah walks over expecting the usual. Maybe a drink order, maybe a question about the player's club, maybe a machine malfunction. Instead, she gets this. I need to speak to your manager right now. Of course, ma'am. Is there a problem with the machine? My $500. I want it back. I didn't mean to bet that much. I must have been confused. Maybe I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry, what? Ma'am, I watched you place the bet. You hit max bet, then spin. I leaned on it by accident. I was reaching for my drink. Sarah looks around. The woman's hands are nowhere near where a drink would be. She's sitting perfectly centered in front of the machine. Ma'am, I need to call my supervisor over. Good, because this is ridiculous. I'm a high roller here. I spend thousands of dollars in this casino every month. The least you can do is reverse one accidental bet. The supervisor arrives. The woman launches into her story again, but this time she's added details. She was dizzy. The lights were confusing her. She's on medication that affects her judgment. Here's where it gets interesting. The supervisor, being thorough, decides to check the surveillance footage, standard procedure for any disputed bet, over $100. He radios up to the Eye in the Sky and asks them to review the last few minutes on that machine. The response comes back in about 30 seconds. She clearly pressed max bet, then spin. Intentional placement, no hesitation. The supervisor delivers the news. Ma'am, surveillance shows the bet was placed intentionally. I'm unable to reverse it. That's when the performance really begins. She's demanding to speak to the general manager. She's claiming the machine is rigged. The entire casino is a scam designed to steal money from innocent people. When the supervisor told her that we couldn't refund intentional play, the switch flipped. Fast. She started crying. She insisted the machine malfunctioned, said her kid's tuition was on that card, said we should have stopped her. The supervisor explains the rules. He offers her a complimentary drink, maybe some food comps to smooth things over, but the money, that's gone. After a few minutes of this circus, she finally storms off. Security quietly escorts her toward the exit, not removing her, just making sure things don't escalate further. The supervisor files his report. Sarah goes back to her rounds, shaking her head at the absurdity of it all. 2 days later, guess who walks back in? Same woman, same designer purse, and yes, she heads straight for the same machine. She hadn't been banned, she didn't cross that line, so security let her pass without issue. Sarah can't believe it. She radios to her supervisor. Reversal Queen is back. In 2007, when Mexican police raided a mansion in Mexico City's exclusive Lomas de Chapultepec neighborhood, they discovered what remains the largest cash seizure in law enforcement history. $207 million in US currency, stacked floor to ceiling throughout the luxurious home. But the owner of that fortune, Genly Yegon, wasn't there to see it confiscated. He was 2,000 miles away in Las Vegas, losing the final remnants of his empire at the poker tables of the Venetian Palazzo. Born in Shanghai in 1963, Genly Yegon had built what appeared to be a legitimate pharmaceutical empire in Mexico. After becoming a Mexican citizen in 2002, he owned Unimed Farm Chem Mexico, a company legally authorized by the Mexican government to import thousands of metric tons of pseudoephedrine and ephedrine, chemicals used in cold medications like Sudafed, but also essential ingredients for manufacturing methamphetamine. From 2002 to 2004, Unimed operated openly and legally. Government audits found no improprieties. Yegon was building a state-of-the-art pharmaceutical plant in Toluca and was recognized as a wealthy, legitimate businessman. But when his license to import these chemicals expired on July 1st, 2005, something changed. According to federal investigators, Yegon continued importing 4 unauthorized containers of precursor chemicals in late 2005 and 2006. Only 4 of Unimed's 291 total imported shipments would ever be questioned, but those 4 shipments would unravel everything. U.S. authorities alleged these imports were part of a conspiracy to aid methamphetamine production for export to the United States. As the walls began closing in on his pharmaceutical operation, Yegon discovered a new outlet for his enormous cash reserves, the high-stakes gambling floors of Las Vegas. Starting in 2004, he became what casinos call a whale, a player so valuable that entire marketing departments dedicate themselves to keeping him happy. Yegon wasn't just any high roller. He identified himself as the owner of Unimed Farm Chem and told casino employees he ran a medical equipment business in Mexico. The Venetian Palazzo conducted their standard due diligence. They verified his government-issued identification, checked his credit history, and screened him against prohibited parties lists. He wasn't on any US government watch lists. He was being allowed into the country freely. Every check came back clean. More impressively, at least 10 major casinos in Atlantic City and Las Vegas were actively courting his business. Over 100 inquiries were made about Yegon by competing casinos trying to steal him away from wherever he was playing. In the high-stakes gambling world, Yegon had become the ultimate prize. By the end of 2006, he had achieved a distinction that would have impressed even the most seasoned casino executives. He became the largest all-cash, upfront gambler the Venetian Palazzo had ever hosted. Unlike most high rollers who play on credit, Yegon arrived with briefcases full of money and wire transfers that dwarfed anything the casino had seen before. But his funding methods were becoming increasingly complex and suspicious. Yegon wired money to the casino from 2 different banks and 7 different Mexican currency exchange houses called Casas de Cambios. The wire transfers came from a maze of companies: Unimed, Farm Chem Mexico, Constructora y Inmobiliaria, Commercial Enlace International, and several others with names that meant nothing to casino compliance officers. Even more unusually, Yegon would send multiple wire transfers from different exchange houses in large amounts spread over several days. On some days, he'd use 2 or 3 different Casas de Cambios simultaneously. Many of his wire transfers lacked sufficient information to identify him as the intended beneficiary. Some transfers were even routed through a Venetian subsidiary in Hong Kong before arriving in Las Vegas. The casino's compliance department began asking questions. On January 3rd, 2007, they instructed their investigations team to identify the ownership of the companies sending these massive wire transfers. The results were troubling. They couldn't determine who actually owned most of these businesses. Internet searches revealed that Yegon was listed on contact information for Unimed and appeared in a lawsuit against the company, but his connections to the other wire-sending entities remained mysterious. What the compliance officers didn't know was that the money being deposited at these Casas de Cambios was arriving in US currency, a fact not visible on the documentation they received. But on March 15th, 2007, Yegon's double life came crashing down. Mexican federal police raided his Mexico City mansion and discovered the largest cash seizure in history. Along with the $207 million in US currency, they found 18 million Mexican pesos, 200,000 euros, gold coins, jewels, weapons, vehicles, and evidence of the sophisticated money laundering operation. 2 days later, on March 17th, when news of the raid appeared in the Los Angeles Times, the Venetian's general counsel immediately contacted the Nevada Gaming Control Board and the DEA to offer full cooperation. What they didn't immediately disclose was that they were still holding over $4 million in funds received from Yegon, which they quietly transferred to their general ledger to partially satisfy his outstanding debt. By then, Yegon was trapped in Las Vegas, reportedly spotted at various casinos even as his empire collapsed. He was arrested without incident at a restaurant in Wheaton, Maryland on July 23, 2007, while still owing the Venetian $36.5 million in bad debt that would ultimately be written off. The scope of the money laundering operation was breathtaking. The $47.4 million that Yegon had sent to the Venetian and lost represented just a fraction of his drug trafficking proceeds. U.S. prosecutors later revealed that Las Vegas Sands Corporation agreed to return this money to avoid criminal prosecution for failing to file required suspicious activity reports. In a rare admission from a casino executive, a Venetian spokesperson acknowledged that, in hindsight, the Venetian Palazzo failed to fully appreciate the suspicious nature of the information pertaining to Yegon and should have filed SARCS earlier and should have filed a more complete SARC when it did file one. The case marked the first time a casino faced the real possibility of federal criminal charges for failing to properly report suspicious funds from a gambler. It was also the first time a casino agreed to return such funds to the government. U.S. Attorney Andre Birat Jr. delivered a stark warning. What happens in Vegas no longer stays in Vegas. All companies, especially casinos, are now on notice that America's anti-money laundering laws apply to all people and every corporation, even if that company risks losing its most profitable customer. Ye Gan's U.S. criminal case was eventually dismissed with prejudice in August 2009 after prosecutors admitted that a key witness had recanted and Mexico had failed to provide crucial evidence for testing. However, he remained in custody pending extradition to Mexico, where he faced separate drug trafficking charges. The irony was not lost on investigators. While Ye Gan had successfully laundered over $47 million through Las Vegas casinos, he had ultimately lost every penny of it. The sophisticated money laundering scheme that should have cleaned his drug proceeds instead became the most expensive gambling addiction in Vegas history. After nearly a decade of fighting extradition, Genly Ye Gan was finally sent to Mexico in October 2016 to face charges there. The case left Las Vegas casinos with new scrutiny and regulations and served as a stark reminder that even in a city built on risk, some bets cost far more than money. Picture a guy in a beat-up car, wearing Kmart clothes, living in a one-bedroom apartment in the worst part of Toronto. Nothing about him screams high roller. Nothing suggests he's about to pull off one of the most audacious bank frauds in Canadian history. Brian Maloney wasn't your typical criminal mastermind. No flashy lifestyle, no cocaine-fueled parties, no designer suits or expensive watches, just a quiet, unassuming bank employee with a degree in journalism and a gambling problem that would eventually shut down an entire casino. It started innocent enough. Brian's dad used to take him to the racetrack as a kid, teaching him how to read the odds, pick winners, understand the game. By 12, Brian placed his first bet. $2 on a horse. The horse won. That rush, that electric feeling of picking right, of beating the system, it hooked him instantly. But here's where it gets interesting. Brian wasn't some degenerate burning through paychecks at the local casino. He was smart. Brilliant, actually. Scored so high on the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce aptitude test that they fast-tracked him straight into management training right out of university. By 26, he was assistant manager with access to millions in loan approvals. The bank trusted him completely. Clean record, sharp mind, perfect employee. That trust would cost them $10.2 million. September 1980, Brian needed $22,300 to cover a gambling loss. Just once, he told himself, one fraudulent loan, he'd win it back, pay it off, nobody would ever know. He fabricated a borrower, forged the documents, approved the loan himself, transferred the money. Easy, and that's the problem with easy money. It never stays easy, and it's never enough. Brian didn't pocket the cash, didn't buy a mansion or a Ferrari. He took every single dollar straight to the casinos. Atlantic City, Las Vegas, anywhere he could place a bet, because Brian wasn't interested in being rich. He was interested in the game, the action, that electrical current running through his veins every time the dice rolled or the cards flipped. He'd bet $75,000 on a single hand of blackjack without flinching, drop $500,000 on a football game. The amounts kept escalating because the rush required bigger and bigger stakes. By 1981, Brian had created an entire ecosystem of fake companies and phantom borrowers. He'd approve a fraudulent loan, transfer the money to an intermediary account, convert it to bank drafts, wire it to the California Clearing Corporation, a Vegas casino subsidiary specifically designed to move gambling money without detection. The genius of it? He'd use new fake loans to make payments on old fake loans, creating this elaborate shell game that made everything look legitimate to auditors. As long as he kept the cycle going, nobody noticed. He made 37 trips to Caesars Boardwalk Regency in Atlantic City over 15 months. At first, he'd stuff hundreds of thousands in cash into his clothes, literally carrying $350,000 on his body through airport security. His car keys set off the metal detector, and he couldn't reach them because bills were packed so tight around them. He stood there, sweating through his shirt, somehow managing to fish out the keys without revealing the fortune strapped to his torso. After that scare, Caesars got creative. They started flying him on private jets, gave him suites, made everything smooth and comfortable because they had a whale on the hook, and whales like Brian were worth keeping happy. Here's the twisted part. Brian never took the perks. No fancy dinners, no prostitutes, no Dom Perignon in the penthouse. He'd fly in on the private jet, go straight to the tables, and gamble until he either passed out or ran out of money. The casino loved him. A gambling addict with apparently unlimited funds who didn't cost them anything in comps. March 1982. Brian lost $1.4 million in a single weekend. Not over weeks or months, one weekend. The money meant nothing to him. Winning meant nothing. It was the action itself. The pure, uncut adrenaline of risk. He'd later describe it as an orgasmic rush that had nothing to do with pleasure and everything to do with compulsion. He once bet $5,000 on 40 different college football games. Lost every single one. 200 grand gone in a day. Normal people would see that as a sign to stop. Brian saw it as a variance he needed to correct. April 26th, 1982, Brian sat down at the craps table at Caesars Atlantic City. Over the next several hours, he lost $1 million. The casino started asking questions. Not because they cared about Brian, they'd been enabling him for over a year, but because the amounts were getting difficult to explain even by Vegas standards. Meanwhile, back in Toronto, police had stumbled onto Brian through a completely unrelated wiretap investigation. They weren't even looking for him, but the intercepted calls painted a picture of someone moving obscene amounts of money with no apparent legitimate source. April 27th, 1982. The day after his $1 million loss, Brian got arrested in Toronto. The bank's audit revealed the scope. 93 fraudulent loans, over 10 million Canadian dollars, nearly 2 years of systematically robbing one of the country's largest financial institutions, and here's the kicker. Brian had lost almost every penny at the tables, no offshore accounts, no hidden assets. The entire fortune evaporated into casino coffers across America. CIBC sued Caesars, arguing the casino knowingly enabled fraud by never verifying where a low-level bank employee was getting millions to gamble. Caesars claimed they never asked for ID or financial verification, which was either the dumbest policy in gambling history or a deliberately blind eye to obvious criminal activity. The lawsuit settled privately, but New Jersey's gaming enforcement decided to make an example. November 30th, 1985, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, one of the busiest gambling days of the year, Caesars Atlantic City was forced to shut down completely for 24 hours. Casino employees sarcastically called it Brian Moloney Day. The shutdown cost Caesars somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 in lost revenue. 6 employees got fined $36,500 for their role in enabling Brian's spree. It was the only time in Atlantic City's legal gambling history that a single gambler caused a casino to cease operations. Brian pleaded guilty in November 1983, 6-year sentence. He served 2.5 years. No dramatic courtroom speeches, no defiant stand. He just admitted everything and went to prison. That's addiction talking. That's the irrational logic of someone who can't see past the next bet. When Philip Seymour Hoffman agreed to play Brian in the 2003 film Owning Mahoney, he spent 3 hours in Brian's suburban office trying to understand what drives a man to obliterate his entire life for something as intangible as a gambling rush. Neither man ever publicly discussed what happened in that meeting, but Hoffman captured something essential in his performance, this quiet, unremarkable man containing an enormous destructive need that eventually consumed everything. Brian got out of prison and rebuilt. Married his girlfriend, who somehow forgave the whole disaster. Had 3 kids, became a management consultant, and ironically speaks at gambling addiction seminars. He's been sober from gambling for over 40 years now. Attends Gamblers Anonymous, slowly paid back what he could to the bank through court-ordered restitution. He'll tell anyone who asks, I will always be an addicted player. It's a progressive, evolving disease. You can't heal from it. It can only be held under arrest. Not held in check, not cured. Arrested. Like a criminal impulse that never completely goes away, just temporarily detained. The man who shut down a casino with someone else's $10 million now works a regular job in Pickering, Ontario, drives a modest car, lives in a modest house, by all appearances, totally ordinary. Which, when you think about it, is exactly how this whole thing started. Sometimes the most spectacular meltdowns happen over the stupidest things. Picture this. Tuesday night, 11 p.m., and the casino floor is settling into that familiar graveyard shift rhythm. Most reasonable people are home, asleep, preparing for Wednesday morning responsibilities, but casinos don't deal in reasonable people. That's when Machine 247 decides to absolutely lose its mind. Not literally explode. But when a progressive jackpot hits about $40,000 in change, it might as well be a nuclear bomb going off. The machine starts screaming its song, lights flashing like a Christmas tree, having a seizure, and suddenly everyone within a 50-foot radius thinks they've won the lottery, including a crazy character who we'll call Margaret. Now, Margaret's been parked at Machine 246 for 6 straight hours, chain-smoking menthols, nursing the same watered-down vodka tonic that's basically flavored ice water at this point, feeding $20 bills into her machine like she's trying to paper train a very expensive, very stubborn pet. She's got that look. You know the one. The 1,000-yard stare of someone who's convinced tonight's the night their luck changes. The glazed-over expression of pure, desperate hope mixed with mounting panic. Her machine? Jaws stone, cold, dead. Not a single decent payout in hours. Just spinning, clicking, taking her money and giving her nothing but false hope and carpal tunnel. But Machine 247, literally 18 inches to her left, that's where the magic happens. Here's where things get interesting. Margaret wasn't sitting at the winning machine. She wasn't even touching it. But in her mind, in that twisted logic that only comes from 6 straight hours of gambling-induced delirium, those two machines are practically the same machine. She'd planted herself between them, feeding bills into 246. Now, I've seen this a lot, and if you've made frequent visit to casinos, you probably know what I'm talking about. You know, weird rituals that people do that they think will make them win. But hey, who am I to judge? Maybe it really does work. Anyway, Margaret was treating them like some kind of slot machine ecosystem where her suffering at one would somehow influence the other. The actual winner, some guy who we'll call Dave, who wandered over from the blackjack tables, dropped a single 20 into 247, hit the spin button exactly once, and walked away $40,000 richer. One spin, 20 bucks, life-changing money. Margaret's reaction was biblical. She starts claiming the jackpot belongs to her. Not just claiming it, demanding it, screaming about how she's been playing those machines all night, how she practically lives at this casino, how this is her spot, her machine, her money by right of suffering. The mathematics are simple. The law is crystal clear. Dave's player card was in the machine. Dave pressed the button. Dave wins, but Margaret's not interested in mathematics. She's interested in cosmic justice. Her version of justice, the kind that says 6 hours of grinding should somehow count for something. She transforms. Right there on the casino floor, this tired-looking, middle-aged woman morphs into a full-blown Karen, demanding managers, then supervisors, then corporate, making threats about lawyers and gaming commissions and how she knows people who know the governor's nephew's dog walker. Dave's standing there with his payout ticket, looking like he accidentally stepped into someone else's complete psychological breakdown, which honestly he did. Security gets called, then security calls for backup, then backup calls for management. Pretty soon, half the casino staff is gathered around these two machines trying to explain basic slot machine physics to a woman who's decided the universe owes her a payday. Margaret's voice gets louder. She's attracting attention from other players, causing a scene that's making everyone uncomfortable. She keeps pointing at machine 246, then at machine 247, like somehow the proximity should count for something. Like being adjacent to winning is the same as actually winning. The confrontation drags on and on. Nearly 5 or 10 minutes of Margaret demanding compensation, Dave wanting his money, security trying to keep everyone calm while management figures out how to handle a situation that shouldn't need handling. Here's where it gets absolutely beautiful. While Margaret's busy arguing with half the casino staff about cosmic unfairness and the injustice of random number generators, machine 246, her machine, the one she'd been feeding all night like a hungry beast, starts quietly, almost politely, paying out. Small wins, nothing huge, but steady money. Consistent hits that might have actually recovered some of her losses if she'd been sitting there instead of having a public breakdown 20 feet away. She's too busy screaming about the jackpot to notice her machine finally deciding to cooperate. Eventually, security escorts Margaret out. Not banned, she's probably a decent revenue source, just strongly encouraged to cool off somewhere else. She's still shouting about lawyers and lawsuits as they walk her toward the exit, her voice echoing through the casino like a siren wailing into the night. Dave quietly collects his 40 grand and vanishes into whatever life people live when they're smart enough to walk away while they're ahead. But here's the kicker. The moment that makes this story absolutely perfect. Maybe 20 minutes after Margaret storms out, some random guy slides into her spot at machine 246. The same machine she'd been torturing for 6 straight hours. The same machine that had been stone cold dead all night, eating her money like a slot machine vampire. Maybe third spin, $700 payout, just like that. The guy doesn't even celebrate. Just cashes out and walks away like hitting $800 is something that happens to him every Tuesday night. Margaret missed it all. 6 hours of grinding, an hour of screaming, and she walks away right before her machine finally decides to reward someone's patience. Just not hers. Sometimes the house wins, sometimes you win, but mostly timing wins everything. Anyway, subscribe for more stories of degenerate gamblers, and as always, remember to be stingy when gambling.
A South Jersey woman's win on a slot machine in Atlantic City is being called into question. She turned to our investigative team for answers after she says the casino refuses to pay the jackpot.
Roni Beale wakes up on a Tuesday morning in February with absolutely no idea. Her life is about to change forever, then get ripped away, then possibly change again. She's 72, lives in a small New Jersey town, and loves slot machines. Not in a desperate gambling addiction way, more like how some people love crossword puzzles or binge watching Netflix. It's her thing. The drive to Atlantic City takes about 40 minutes. Just enough time to get excited, not enough time to talk yourself out of it. Here's how modern slot machines actually work, and this matters for what happens next. The second you press that spin button, the computer already knows if you won or lost. Everything after that, the spinning reels, the dramatic pauses, the flashy lights, it's all just for show. Pure theater. The outcome is determined by something called a random number generator. Think of it like the world's most sophisticated coin flip. Except instead of heads or tails, it's picking from thousands of possible combinations. So when Roni sits down at her favorite Wheel of Fortune machine that Tuesday afternoon, every spin is already decided before the reels even start moving. 3:17 p.m. She's been playing for a while, maybe down a few $100. One more spin, the machine explodes, not literally, but close.
And it went off. It says you're a winner, and gold coins popped out. This guy, very nice guy, says, "Oh my God, you hit, you hit." He said, "Lady, you are a millionaire."
Lights flashing everywhere, speakers blasting that unmistakable jackpot sound, digital gold coins cascading across the screen. You're a winner! $1,277,955.16. But wait, there's more. The multiplier lights up. 2x, final total, $2,555,910.32, $2.5 million. A guy behind her starts yelling, "Oh my God, you hit! Lady, you're a millionaire." Other players gather around. Everyone's celebrating. The machine is celebrating. Roni presses the service button to call an attendant. This is it. This is the moment her life changes forever. Security shows up fast. Too fast. And they're not smiling. Then she sees it on the screen. Tilted. Which basically means a malfunction that halts gameplay and voids the whole win due to suspected technical issues.
That's when the sentences came up tilted. When the man came over to talk to me, he said, "Lady, get it in your head. You won nothing."
Beal says she was told the machine had a malfunction known as real tilt.
The machine gets confused and stops working right. And the casino uses that as a reason not to pay out the prize, except Roni stated the machine was working perfectly fine. Lady, get it in your head. You won nothing. The casino attendant is matter-of-fact about it. Machine malfunction, he says. But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean deeply suspicious. The attendant opens up the machine with a key and starts messing around inside. He's got the reels rolling slow, pushing buttons, making adjustments, essentially performing surgery on what should be evidence. I want you to spin it off, he tells her. This is the smartest thing Roni Beal ever did. No, I will not. Because if you think you legitimately won something, why would you help them erase the evidence?
He had it rolling real slow. He had it opened. And then he's pushing it.
She says the attendant then hit different buttons inside, ultimately offering her a mere $350.
They fooled with the machine before anybody else had to take, had an opportunity to take a look at this.
After several minutes of mechanical theater, the attendant makes an offer. $350 for a win that displayed over 2 million. Think about this logic. If the machine truly malfunctioned, if she truly won nothing, why offer her anything at all? Definitely not shady. It's like your calculator displaying the wrong answer, but you still kind of believe it might be right. This exact scenario played out in the year 2000. Same slot machine manufacturer IGT, same tilted excuse. The same company claimed the computer overruled what the player saw. A lawyer named Jacques Bezau took them to court. IGT's defense was basically, sure, it looked like he won, but the computer says otherwise. The jury didn't buy it. Neither did the appellate judge. After years of legal warfare, IGT paid out $1.3 million.
It turns out this is not the first case where a real tilt has been disputed on a Wheel of Fortune slot machine. Jacques Bezou took Harrah's Casino in New Orleans and IGT to court in 2000 after his client disputed the same slot malfunction.
IGT took the position that, look, even though aesthetically these symbols came up, it wasn't a win because the computer says it wasn't a win.
Bezou says a jury did not agree, nor did an appellate judge. After years in legal limbo, IGT was ultimately responsible for the $1.3 million jackpot.
When Roni comes back the next day with her husband, hoping for some explanation, the casino's response is swift and brutal. They escort her out, tell her not to come back. A loyal customer for years suddenly banned. Why? Because she had the audacity to believe their machine when it said she won. If you were genuinely dealing with a technical glitch, wouldn't you want to work with the customer, investigate properly, show some basic human decency? Instead, they treat her like a criminal for believing what their own machine told her. Here's where Bally's, which is the casino, and IGT, the manufacturer of the slot machine, play corporate hot potato. We just house the machine, talk to IGT. We're cooperating with the investigation. Neither company wanted to take responsibility. Meanwhile, Roni sits at home with a heart condition. She literally had a heart attack last year, dealing with stress that could kill her. This isn't just about one jackpot, it's about the fundamental deal between casinos and customers.
You invite somebody to your business, they pay the money, they win, you're supposed to pay. That didn't happen.
According to industry data, there were over 8,000 complaints against casinos in 2023. Only about 2,200 got resolved. That's thousands of people who felt cheated, with most never getting satisfaction. How many convenient malfunctions right after big wins? Roni's attorney, Mike DeCroce, immediately did the smart thing: preserve the evidence. He contacted gaming enforcement, demanding they save the machine and all casino videos for independent review. Because these machines keep detailed logs of every single spin, an expert examination would show exactly what happened at 3:17 p.m. that Tuesday. But there's a problem. The casino attendance manipulation compromised the evidence. The most damning evidence isn't what happened with the machine, it's everything that happened after. If this was truly a simple malfunction, why immediately try to get her to spin again? Why manipulate the machine before any examination? Why offer money if she won nothing? Why ban her for asking questions? Now I tried to follow up with the case and to see if Roni eventually got the money she was owed. This was back in May of 2024, but however I couldn't find anything, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the case just vanished into thin air. Anyway, I'd love to hear if any of you have ever had a similar experience. Have you ever won off gambling, but the company decided, you know what, screw you? Let me know in the comments, and as always, remember to be stingy when gambling.